A very good evening to you and welcome to this Friday's edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko and thank you for tuning in. On the show tonight, fixing local government. What to expect from the crop of councillors you elected last year on November 1. This on the back of a 3-day conference the country's mayors, senior municipal officials and other stakeholders held over the past 3 days in Cape Town. The Watchdog starts now. Electricity users who owe municipalities money, you'd rather pay up or they are going to switch you off. That's if they stick to resolutions they took this past 3 days. Now, the president opened the conference in which you were elected president of SALGA. He said a lot of things, but among them, emphasizing the fact that we need to go to the basics, give people water, electricity, clean the streets, and those kinds of things.
Yes, indeed, and only addition on that. For us to succeed to do that, you need to have ability to work cooperatively. Because in my own take, local government, as they say, is the cold face. That's where service delivery is taking place. And there is no community called community belong to national or provincial government. Community belongs in a local state. And therefore, that is why it is so important to have ability to use our collaborative framework to work and towards rendering service to these communities.
But then, as I think a lot of speakers, not only the president of the country said, it's time that local government goes back to what the Constitution says is its core responsibility, and that is giving basic services to the people.
Yes, we fully agree with the president, and that is why in our closing we cited his message that he gave to us, because his message is reflecting how worried he is about the state of local government. And all of us will know in the current period challenges that are faced by local government. One of the challenges, if I may cite, is the capacity challenge and people that would attract into local government space. And I think if you were part in our closing, we highlighted that as a challenge. And then we said we must take a decisive stand as local government practitioners so that we must attract people of capacity, knowledge and skill that will be contributing towards changing the local government outlook so that they perform the duties according to their ability that they have.
But they may well have that ability, but if they don't have the right attitude or the right approach to their work, they are bound to fail because they start concentrating or focusing on other things, in other words, away from their core responsibilities. So the question of attitudes and commitment can't be overemphasized.
Very true. That is why, as an association, we engage on program to skill and capacitate local government practitioners. And then we are coupling that with we need to be decisive in taking decisions. Because look, for instance, Vuyo, in my life I'm coming from a private business and you are driven by goals and objectives. And if you occupy a senior position and you don't meet your targets, consequence management is effective, comparatively speaking to government. Lack of consequence management, it contributes to what you are talking about. And therefore, that is why in our closing, we are saying we must implement consequence management at all material time, because resources that are at our disposal are not our resources, are resources of the community. And therefore, they entrusted us with that responsibility to spare the resources to their benefit and make sure that the service is rendered to them. In fact, by the way, in my own writing, I'm saying what you see as service, I'm seeing it as return on investment, because community voted me into office, returns on the investment that they've made, that investment is to lose time to go and vote for me. Then that investment is to give service back to them. And that service should not be just a service, but it should be a quality service.
Now, one of the things that are in your declaration, quite forcefully, is your ability to raise money so that you can perform the functions that the Constitution wants you, the roles that the Constitution wants you to play. Now, a big part of that is your ability to actually collect money, collect revenue. We've seen over the past month a couple of municipalities beginning to get people, those who can afford, those who are able to pay. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his keynote address, asked you to continue doing that. And it's now part of the resolution of this conference that elected you.
That is why even in taking the resolution from the declaration, we made it as our statement that we need to focus to. And we will encourage member municipalities to continue doing that. The reality of the matter, Vuyo, that we must always remember is that local government is not just a social club. It is a real business, and it should be run according to business principles. Because investing money, you expect returns on the money that you have put in that business. And then that is why we said we have any reasons not to collect to those that they can pay. All of us, we must pay what is due to local government. Of course, you can take a municipality in Mkandoli in the Eastern Cape. It faces different conditions. There are conditions of inability to collect. They have no money, they will depend elsewhere. And therefore, that is why we say through collaboration amongst ourselves as government, we can assist and intervene in situations of that nature.
And with regard to, I heard the Minister of Cooperative Governance in her address saying it's also about time that local government get what is due to it. In other words, your fair share of the pie from the Fiscal. Does that give you hope that going forward, local government is going to be better funded than has been the case up until now?
I think Tatu Masondo will know this debate when he was the president of SANCA. And that debate rose true up until today. We are happy to see a change of heart and understanding that local government alone, it cannot succeed. Vuyo, it's very unfair if you look at it properly. If you allocate resources on the basis of functions, I can take you an example that in the Constitution, out of 100% functions existing in the Constitution, 46% of those functions are performed by local government. Yet local government is receiving 10% of the share, and 40% go to the province and 51% to national. It is a right track to move towards allocating resources where it's needed most. And we can do that if we have a better understanding. I know there's a notion that is outside there, and this unfortunate notion is that how do you give you more money but you don't have a capacity? If you read Section 154 of the Constitution, it speaks about supporting local government. Now, if you identify that you are having these weaknesses in terms of capacity, why don't you ignite the instrument to support that? Because you have a concern that there is no performance. So we are happy to hear that, Minister, ultimately there's an agreement between us and her, and we hope for the best beyond that period.
Of course, capacity is one thing, but when you are given the responsibility to actually look after public money, you also need to make sure that you do with the money what that money is actually meant for. And often, that doesn't happen. From people not playing their oversight role to corruption and maladministration.
I think, Vuyo, that point it goes to what we are arguing every time. For instance, I know in Municipality A, we have given them 10 rand. 9 rand of that 10 rand is gone, and we don't know where that money gone. What is the role of police in a cooperative governance? This is the point that I'm raising. Because all of these things we know. I mean, for instance, a municipality, that is why I'm saying in the statement, let us support the MPEC committees that we establish as council. Because MPEC is established to play oversight on behalf of council. And therefore, consequences upon discovery of wrong things must be effected. The problem is that I think in South Africa, we've got a weakness of understanding what we meant by cooperative governance. We thought, we are thinking that cooperative governance, okay, there's a problem, and therefore label that problem. It's not about that. Cooperative governance is to put all energies around the table and resolve the problem. I mean, for instance, in South Africa, we have been diagnosing what is the problem, but we have never provided what is the solution. And the solution lies within cooperative governance framework.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, and thank you very much for talking to us. November 1 gave us something that was less than ideal. But we're here now. The mandate of local government also has not changed. And this conference had to grapple with that reality.
True, Vuyo, I wouldn't say the outcome was not ideal. I think it's an expression of what people wanted, either by voting or by staying away. What is important for councillors is to make sure, particularly in the 70 municipalities, around about 106 municipalities will not be fairly stable, taking from the experience of coalitions or partnerships that were forged between 2026 to 2021. We're already beginning to see signs as a department, even in the new 5 months or so that we have already had. We're currently sitting with 70 in coalitions and a further top 32 or so, which doesn't look like it will be able to be stable. And that is too much, because in the examples and the desktop research that the department has undertaken, it shows that coalitions, unfortunately, puts the needs of the people behind. They sit and fight in council for 6 months to adopt a budget to service the people. And with that not being adopted, it means they can't be able to spend. I mean, we're sitting with most of that 70 still have not yet elected committees of council. You know what does that mean? It means they are not yet in the business of servicing the people that elected them. They're in the service of bickering. Who's in the mayor? Who's supporting who? And another motion of confidence after they've just elected the mayor the past week. And I think that's what we are trying to harmonize as COCTA to make sure that we are able to get at the bottom of the issue and put service delivery at the front of what municipalities are supposed to do.
As an outsider looking in, so to speak, but having traveled this road and having to grapple with the reality of what the November 1 election gave us, and having seen the enthusiasm, the zest, especially coming from the new councillors, the new crop that was elected last year. Did you get a sense, Mr. Manyoni, that everyone is prepared to not only acknowledge the reality we are in, or that the November 1 election gave us, but that they are prepared to take advantage of the opportunities it also presents to turn things around and go back to the basics?
I think it is clear that in South Africa now, coalitions are a reality. There's no doubt about that. But basically, you can see that political parties were not ready and they are not well prepared to work in coalition. They are still in the mode of partisan politics. And what we need to do is to move from that mode of partisan politics to coalition politics, where we are saying, working together, we will be able to make our municipalities perform. And that is a challenge. And I think it's SALGA's job also to assist with that. That immediately when you are in office, you are expected to perform as per legislation and the Act. As also my colleague here has indicated, my DM, there is no other way now. The only best way is not to keep on bickering about politics, but to say, hey, guys, we all are in this. Now we must sort it out. And that's basically what we need to do.
Now, you were still, the president of SALGA when ideas were put on the table about ensuring that if the election gives us hung councils, as it has done in an unprecedented fashion after the November 1 election, there has to be mechanisms that ensure that what you so well encapsulated earlier doesn't necessarily mean that communities aren't going to be serviced. In other words, we're not going to spend 5-6 months just trying to approve a budget.
Well, Vuyo, yes, we did as SALGA put up a coalition strategy which we tried to canvass with political parties as an idea and a thought of, for example, sign agreements as partners, have deliverables as partners, have targets of what are you going to move this municipality for 52 months towards what direction. You know, a painful example is Nelson Mandela Bay in the past term, or 5 years of a local government term. They couldn't even build a single LPP. Not that they didn't have money, not that there were no beneficiaries. But we all know it deteriorated to a level that we actually in 5 years had 4 mayors from different parties.
Why did the proposals, what you had come up with as SALGA and well-crafted, not kick in?
Well, it's exactly what President Manyoni says, is the partisan belief that it must be a winner. It's a number issue, not a contextual, not a delivery issue, but more about I'm the one, I'm in charge, I'm a mayor, and this party is out. So it's actually even the strategy and the coalitions themselves in hung municipalities are not formed on basis of we're going to deliver. They are formed on basis we must take him out. And then think, now that he's out, what are we going to do? And at that time, you must be removing refuse, sewer must be running in people's house, etc. And everything needs to be functional. And the time to do that is not there. But we also have realized as SALGA that political parties also don't take a strong and prompt action to assist their parties as their deployees so that they are able to come together. If it means it needs a political strategy of the parties, sign those agreements and move forward. Each and every party will be coming from its own direction. If you don't give me a mayor or position of being a MMC infrastructure where there's money or housing or whatever, I'm not going to vote with you. So that's what hung and coalitions are about today. And it's if you don't give me corporate services so that I can hire people, I'm not going to be part of this coalition. In fact, they list these issues which are anti-development, are anti-community development, and are not driven by what assists communities. And that is what, unfortunately, led us to where we are today. But I think from a government point of view, we also need now legislation levers, and the department needs to now begin to put teasers. I mean, nobody anticipated what will happen when a municipality fails to adopt a budget. Yes, you can dissolve it. What if you come with the same outcome as well? Because you're going back to the same people who expressed themselves. They are not happy in 2 months' time. Maybe if they were not happy, they may not come back to the voting poll. So we need legislation levers which says you can't form council in 5 months, you can't form committees, we have not started with the budget. Can the provincial government continue run as an example? But you need levers which are legislated on how, one, to run the coalitions, two, in the absence of that, somebody must close the vacuum, because communities rely on municipal service every day, every hour, and we can't afford not to provide that.
Now, you're both former SALGA presidents, you're both former mayors, and Mr. Mayoni, you sat through a lot of the commissions. You sat through plenary, listened to what the president, the minister, everyone else had to say. You listened to the young, councillors who are coming in fresh, who don't have any past, that ties them either to this organization or to the municipalities and communities they have to serve. Did you get a sense that this time around things may just change, hopefully for the better?
I think things will change for the better. We have now a crop of young people out there who have the energy and the zeal. Of course, experience is quite important, and they will need to learn fast. But what I have hope in is that there will be pressure from the ground. South Africans will get impatient with people who are not seen to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And very soon, that message will be coming out. And as local government leaders, our new crop, they basically must know that they need to focus, or else they will be written off. Imagine being young, you come in, you just serve one term, you are no more going to come back again because people don't have confidence in you. And that pressure is basically coming. And that's what basically brings hope for me. That ultimately, the pressure from below will make all of them to focus and do what is right.
Well, as a veteran and with all the benefits that hindsight brings with, what would be your advice?
My advice is immediately when we are elected, remember, you are no more a mayor of a party. You are a mayor of citizens of your own town or local government or municipality. You are a leader of that area. You basically are supposed then to be seen to be working for everyone there. That's why I'm stressing the point of partisan politics need to basically be no more a dominant factor, but the factor should be having everybody under your wing and making sure that everybody works. Immediately when you are elected, you're basically a leader of everybody in that particular municipality.
And your ministry and department, of course, has the unenviable task of, among other things, having to whip people into line, get them to do what they are elected to do.
Well, yes, if you could ask with the mayors, I think I sent a circular on the 10th of October. I will not even forget the date. And the circular was one of the longest. I think it was a 3-page Bible saying what council needs to do. I mean, moving to an extent that if you don't adopt a budget, you must sign for it or sign against it. So that Vuyo will hold you in person accountable. One, communities need to know who is voting not to deliver services for us. But secondly, we also went into an extent that all audit action plans must be individually signed by all council members, because we cannot repeatedly say this issue was raised by the AG and council just decided not to provide its oversight in improving those issues. But when have you seen councillors or councils not being given money prior the allocation? Before, we will say, don't approve unfunded budgets. Come, let's put you under RFPs, which is the, FRPs, financial recovery plans, and municipalities will refuse and ask for a release of funds prior. You might have seen some have been going to Pick and Pay. The allocation is only coming in June, and it will come in June. So we are moving away from a fact where we always say benefit of the doubt goes to councils, it will give oversight. Let's be understanding. We look into the track record. How long have we been understanding? How is the situation changing? No, go back home. Tell your employees we're not going to be able to pay them until June. But we're also looking now, linking into audit performance together with infrastructure performance. We can't keep on allocating very bare resources to small rural municipalities which are doing well and are able to account for their funds, and still keep on pumping the same funds to municipalities which are disclaimer adverse, and you can see they are not even putting an effort in their audit plan. So we're realigning now to say performance you get more, no performance you get less. Go explain to your people. We will go ourselves as well and tell them the crop that you have there is not the one that you need to have, because it has no interest of securing the basic minimum resources that they receive to send them back to you. I mean, you have municipalities, it has no money, they hold their meetings in a hotel, a small meeting of 5 people, a mayor and 2, 3 other directors. You have a boardroom here, so why are you in a hotel? Yet you are in that hotel resolving to get additional funds. So such of things need to change, and we focus each and every cent we have to turning municipalities. In fact, the president responded and said, we want our communities to have services. But Deputy Minister, I want your constituency also to show that it deservedly can be the custodian of the funds on behalf. Don't come here and tell me local government has no fair allocation. I understand that, but show cause of where that allocation must go to, and where, when it was allocated last time, did it go to, and are people happy? And I think I'm willing to take him up on that challenge. And I do believe with the 3 days that we have been here, municipalities are up for that. But we're also having capacity development. President Manyoni was talking about young people, young mayors. We are going to adopt as a department young female mayors and young male mayors, put them under a capacity development program with the national government school and Vets Business School, to ensure that in the 5 years they would have reached the competencies that are necessary to be the mayor, and the communities could hopefully believe in them again and give them a chance of a real leading again. You can't be a mayor, unfortunately, for more than 10 years. But if you have given a young person 10 years of full service delivery, I think that will be a benefit. So we'll also be coming with capacity development programs targeted at the young new crop to make sure that they are able to understand what the complexities of local government are, and hopefully with the understanding they'll be able to be fast and prompt enough on the service delivery that our people need.
So sending a circular around was you, the ministry and the department saying, don't say we didn't tell you, yes. We're going to be tough this time around.
Yeah, and sometimes we have sent those circulars and never lived by them. You send the circular, then you release the man. But send the circular and don't release. And then you begin to receive calls. Please come with the National Treasury team, come and assess us, tell us what are the milestones, what should we do. We'll come to those council. I went to Likwa Municipality, we addressed with the Deputy Minister Masondo, council itself, and we said, these are your targets. Then you will go out of administration because they're under Section 139. You know, I visited Mkhalagwena and I'm happy that I'm beginning to see change. We assisted them together with the provincial department. I don't know when they've not closed the pothole in town for many years, but you go to Mkhalagwena now, the situation is different. The response is positive, but we need to begin to move with the 64 that was identified by Cabinet last year. They are on a cabinet resolution that the situation must turn around. And these 2, for example, are part of that cabinet memo. And I'll be going into many. I have an appointment with Steve Chwete Municipality. They are not in the memo, but you don't wait for things to fall apart until you go. They were beginning to see signs which needs us to up the game as a municipality. You know, they were one of the best municipalities in the country. Had a discussion with the mayor. We're going there. I'm going to Governor Mbeki, I think on Thursday next week. They are under the 64 that is there. Going to meet the entire EXCO together with the mayor, chief whip and speaker to say, if you don't shape up, you're not going to receive your allocation. So we are in that journey. Unfortunately, there isn't anything that we could do but to get the municipalities to work. But we need the lever, as I say, as a department, which will then say, can I then, if it's a housing that is not being done, can National withdraw its license to the municipality and put houses, because beneficiaries are there while we are sorting ourselves out. I need a lever which says, okay, sewer is not right in Machabeng and there's still issues in the municipality. Dear Mahlobo, go directly. Let the money that was supposed to go to Machabeng for sewer go straight to the department. Fix the issue. I will come back to you. Getleng River, the community, the River municipality, the community is running its own sewer treatment plant. They hand it back to the municipality. It collapsed after a month. It's a court order, actually. So I need to be able to be allowed to say, Department of Water and Sanitation, in the meantime, I'm solving the problem. People need to receive sanitation. Please walk in on my behalf. I will come back and tell you. And I do believe with that action, everybody will live by their constitutional obligation. I'm not removing money from any municipalities. You get it, you use it well, I won't even visit you. You get it, you don't use it well, you don't use it at all, I must assist. Not only you, but also the communities who are supposed to receive the service that is not going to them because of whatever reason that the municipality will be experiencing. But we're going there in partnership, not in a spirit of it.
Mr. Manyana, do you think this new way of doing things, the toughness that the Deputy Minister has just spoken about, is going to change the attitudes of those who have to deliver the services to the people?
My DM knows that's my approach. You need to be tough in order to deal with the patient. But the lesson that we have learned in these past elections is South Africans have made it clear. To paraphrase, we don't care about the color of the cat, whether brown, black, or white. As long as the cat delivers, we will give it a chance. And basically, that message must be clear to leaders, particularly in local government, that we just need a cat that catches the mice, or else that cat will be irrelevant. Never mind the color of the cat. And I think that's basically what now we need to look into. But because we are a government, we can't just leave things out there to happen on their own. Hence, this type of interventions. And you need to have tough interventions, measures, to make sure that things really happen. In other words, we will push the horse to the river and force it to drink. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manyoni. Ms. Nkadimeng, thank you very much for your time. Both, of course, former SALGA presidents, but also both former mayors themselves. My next guests are Dr. Tina Nzo and Khomotso Letsatsi. Thanks very much for agreeing to talk to me today. Now, you both, which is the point of this conversation, had an opportunity to delve a little bit deeper into, the financial situation of municipalities, where we are, what the issues are, what's going wrong, what is working. And that commission deliberated, which you are both part of, deliberated a lot on that. What for you stood out from the conversation, the conversations that you had, especially given that you had in your midst a lot of new councillors, full of zest, full of enthusiasm, but I don't know whether you got a sense that they are clear about what is happening in that space, the capability of municipalities, not only to handle finances, but also to be self-sustaining.
Thank you very much, Vuyo. I think for me, really what really stood out is how robust the engagements were, and especially around the funding model of local government. No doubt that the assumptions in the 1998 white paper on local government have actually not been realized if we assess the financial performance and the number of financially distressed municipalities, and the fact that a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of funding local government also definitely does not work. And and probably a consideration in terms of the demarcation process as well, and taking into consideration the financial sustainability of municipalities, because some of the municipalities, if you reflect just on the customer base, it's almost like set up to actually fail, which is basically reflected in the debtors book, where consumers don't pay for the services that are consumed, municipal services, and hence we have the debtors book moving in the wrong direction, currently sitting at close to 300 billion, and that on its own is a huge risk to the sustainability of this very important sphere of government.
And for you, what stood out?
I can absolutely agree with Khomotso. Those issues really came out quite vigorously during the debate. But most importantly, another issue is the capacity of the budget and treasury of municipalities. We were a commission that was dealing with municipal finances and the ability of municipalities to raise revenue. But smaller municipalities have brought to our attention that they aren't able to raise revenue due to the fact that they don't have investments in their municipalities. Again, investment attraction comes with the ability for you to maintain and develop new infrastructure. How can an investor come to a municipality if you don't have the basic infrastructure? So it goes back to the institutional capacity as well. When they said that the budget and treasury don't have the capacity to even plan for their growth and development strategies. So in a commission where we're supposed to deal with finances, you find that issues around professionalization of local government, where you get capable municipal officials to come into the system, where you get councillors who are able to know exactly what their developmental agenda should be. So that stood out very clearly. The smaller municipalities are distressed. Smaller municipalities need to build their capacity internally. Smaller municipalities are financially in a strain when it comes to their finances, especially their capital budgets, to develop new infrastructure. So that really came out very clearly during the debate. Yeah.
Let's start with the one-size-fits-all problem. Is there a realization from central government that this approach simply doesn't work and we have to do something about it?
I would say there's definitely a realization. I think SALGA has been very vocal in advocating for re-looking at the local government fiscal framework. We participate in the budget forum, which is led by the Minister of Finance as well as the Minister of COCTA, and the FFC as well. Participate. So these issues have basically been on the table for a while.
But do you get a sense that you're being listened to?
The follow through, actually, we would like the pace to be a little bit faster. We definitely appreciate the fact that even in terms of the 2022-2023 DORA that has basically been passed, there's been a slight increase from 9% in terms of nationally raised revenue to local government to just over 10%. So we're moving in the right direction in that particular regard, but obviously we need to really re-look at the overall funding model. I mean, especially over and above the fact that, your back office kind of related stuff around audit outcomes, ability to actually spend on time and account for the transaction, probably we need to sort that out as local government, but it does not take away the fact that a per kilometer road, whether you roll it out in Joburg or you roll it out in some municipality in Zanin, it's exactly the same. So the formulas for allocation should actually take those basically into consideration. How best can we basically fund rural municipalities, given that metros, as much as they do have challenges, but they've got pretty much stronger balance sheets that they can actually tap into debt capital markets and to raise additional funding. And like I've basically indicated in the commission, if you look at the loan book for the entire sector, we're sitting at around 70 billion. But over 60 billion of that is basically metros that have basically gone out, and your district and locals are actually not active in that particular regard, meaning that the consequence thereof is the ability to respond to their capital infrastructure investment requirements in improving service delivery.
So do you get a sense that national government actually recognizes that the fact that the one-size-fits-all approach simply doesn't work?
They know what's going on at local government, but again, like Khomotso says.
But do they take it seriously? In other words, listening is one thing, but doing something about what you're hearing is quite another.
Again, remember, if we're going to speak about fiscal issues, it involves the National Treasury. And the National Treasury, by the way, recognizes the fact that South Africa has been having a slow growth when it comes to our economy. And, the slow growth means that, as a country, when it comes to our fiscal collection, we are really strained. Our deficits, we've got deficits, we've got loans to repay, and there is this feeling that, we are becoming a bankrupt state, in other words, because if you're looking at our Moody's rating in South Africa, our borrowings are limited. So they are constrained in the sense that, okay, if we're saying that we need to take local government seriously in terms of raising their allocations, where are we going to get that money from? We've got other programs, specific, programs in departments that need to be funded. So it means that you'll be stealing from Peter to pay Paul. So there are those issues that we have to contend with. But again, one thing that I raised in the commission is the fact that if we need to move this topic forward and also get national government to recognize that our promises that we made in the white paper are not realized 25 years later, then we have to start looking at formulating a green paper. White papers are not cast on stone, Vuyo. There are promises that are made by government, policy statements that are made by government. But if we can see that these policy statements that are made by government are not realizable in the white paper, then we have to review it. Countries do that. The UK did that when they could see that local government was not performing. And they went into a commission in 1998, which is called the Maud Commission. So why can't we do that? We need to make that review, and it starts off with the green paper so that we consolidate the voice of local government and put those proposals forward, especially issues that have got to do with constitutional realization of local government as prescribed by Chapter 7. So if we're not able to do that, let's go back to the green paper, let's put the discussions forward so that we can push forward for a review of a white paper before we even go to a bill. So, yeah.
Of course, the problems of municipal finances often have little, in fact, nothing to do with policy. They've got nothing to do with the problem of a one-size-fits-all when it comes to budgeting. They have a lot to do with people misbehaving, people spending money that they do not have, people not spending, just misappropriating funds.
So definitely, one of the things that we really reflected on, can you actually regulate behavior? And I think the main thing that we should celebrate as a country is our institutional arrangements and the autonomy to a certain extent that local government basically has. The MFMA provides for a follow-through and hold accounting officers and those that transgress the legislation basically accountable. And it's the responsibility of the leadership in municipalities, whether it's audit committees, it's council, it's MPEC, to hold people accountable for those transgressions. And we haven't seen much of that, but I think in the past 2 years, and one thing that we advocate for as SALGA and also the legislation empowering the AG in terms of following through on these issues around material irregularities. So we've seen a number of cases that the SIU is basically focusing on to make sure that there's a clawback from those that basically transgress the legislation, and hopefully in that way we would see behavior changing. But it also boils down to getting the right people in those jobs. And not that I'm disrespecting the teacher's profession as an example, but you cannot have someone with a teacher's diploma actually being a CFO of municipalities. If you look at how big corporates and JSE listed companies, the caliber of people that actually work in that environment and oversee the affairs of those companies are fit for purpose. And that's a principle that we basically need to apply as local government, and we should be able to see that particular shift.
Did you get a sense, that especially the new crop, that was elected, on November 1 acknowledges that this is one of the big problems that have actually crippled many municipalities, excuse me, and they are ready, willing and able to actually turn things around.
Yes, there is that feeling, Vuyo, because local government has been on our tongues for quite some time now, especially since we've had municipalities getting into coalition formations and all the politics that have been unfolding over the past few years. So the new crop of councillors, they do have that feeling. They do have a sense that, our balance sheets are not so well balanced, and they do realize that they have made promises to their constituencies and communities, and they'll have to deliver on those promises. But delivering on those promises means that we need money. Otherwise, they will not be able to realize those promises. I mean, most councillors during that session were actually talking about, service delivery protests that might erupt moving forward, as much as they can hold their participation meetings in their communities. But again, communities want to see action on the ground, and they have that feeling that if we do not really get our finances in order, that might put them in a very precarious position where their legitimacy as councillors might be threatened because they're representative of these communities. So they really wanted to get to the crux of the issue, where small, peri-urban and rural municipalities finally get to have a voice in addressing these issues, because for the next 5 years it's not going to be an easy process for them moving forward. I mean, just quickly, another councillor spoke to me and said, Tina, we are having a problem in a municipality. I am a mayor, I've been newly appointed, but we are having a problem in the municipality where we find ourselves paying debts to Eskom rather than delivering the services. We are now an indebted municipality, and if we don't pay those debts, we get cut off by Eskom, and there will be protests that are going to come. So those are the issues they want a resolution. And they said, you know what, we need SALGA to really represent these issues. Why can't we find other models where we can address these issues? So energy poverty, energy insecurity is one of the major concerns that municipalities are facing, that are making their balance sheets not to balance.
Of course, there's also the issue of which you alluded to, skills, capacity, to manage books, or even when they're playing their oversight role. I mean, if you get someone who simply doesn't have the capacity to interrogate, the numbers, the books, then they're not going to be able to play their oversight role.
So definitely, and I think that's where SALGA comes in, that as much as SALGA has built a lot of capacity in terms of training of councillors, but continuous training definitely is required to assist councillors to undertake that oversight role in terms of understanding the risks, the financial risks, and basically the numbers. But it just boils down to, I mean, for me, Vuyo, it just boils down to having the right people in the job with their hearts and minds basically in the right place. I mean, what justifies keeping a CFO that over 5 years all that you basically put on the table is adverse audit outcomes, and that's where accountability and consequence management basically comes in. And for us, from where we're sitting, is as basic as that. It's an independent process by the AG. If there's an area that is fully covered, it's around the financial issues and the compliance issues from the AG, and it unpacks it in a non-technical way that anybody else that's basically able to read could just take that document and you would be able to have a very good picture of what the issues are. So the expectations really is not for councillors to be technical financial analysts. That's the responsibility of officials in those municipalities, and for councillors just to provide leadership in terms of what's bestowed on them, in terms of the relevant legislation, and basically just to oversee that there is compliance overall with legislation and prudent financial management.
Of course, at the end of the day, it's also about what the political system gives you. In other words, if political parties, or this applies to independents as well, give you people who simply don't have the ability or the capacity to play their oversight role, in other words, interrogate those books, then it's just not going to help.
Absolutely. One of the issues, again, when it comes to capacity and the whole drive of professionalizing local government, is that we need to be very careful when it comes to the issue of appointing councillors and electing councillors. Now, political parties have got to follow the Constitution, because the Constitution says that a public representative is a person who can be elected by their communities, and you don't need to bring in any restrictions when it comes to their education levels, because it will be discrimination. You can't introduce those restrictions, taking into account that we're coming from a very ugly past where our black communities had been marginalized when it comes to their ability to acquire education, their ability to participate in state structures. So we need to be very careful about that. So we can't introduce the issue of education levels, otherwise we'll be very discriminatory and going against the Constitution. But again, there are certain positions in the municipality that really requires a certain level of skills, and those positions are related to the MMCs, the members of the mayoral committee, which are part of the Section 80 in the Local Government Act, and there are Section 79 committees that also require councillors to have a certain level of knowledge and education. So when political parties start to think about appointing these members of these committees, then they have to think about their skills. That's why the issues of interviews that was addressed by the ANC ruling party came into the conversation, whether we can interview mayors to see their capability and their leadership to lead these institutions. Same goes for MMCs, because there's a lot of technical work that is involved when it comes to them providing oversight, reading reports, understanding exactly what is written in these reports. If you're going to be an MMC that's providing oversight and leadership over the finance committee, then you've got to know your numbers. So they have to build that capacity, and SALGA has that responsibility to ensure that there are ongoing programs. We've got the School of National, the National School of Government that is now providing leadership programs, but now we need to start thinking about the technical aspects of those leadership programs, not just only about ethics, but also the technicalities, because in municipalities we do find that there are rogue administrators. Unfortunately, councillors only realize at the end that we were being deceived. This information was not being provided for us to interrogate. Only when the auditor comes in, then they realize that we have been making decisions based on, information that was not being provided in a very transparent manner. So you need those technical skills.
Thanks to both of you for being part of this conversation. Hopefully, whatever is going to come out of this conference will begin to make a big difference in the area of municipal finances. Thank you very much. And that's our show for this evening. Thank you for watching, but do join us again on Monday. Have a good night.